What's going on, guys? This is going to be our summary of markets week 40. Pretty soon we're going to hit that 1 year mark on the summary of markets, but let's get started. So we're going to have the summary markets first, then we're going to go into the options watch list after, same as always. We're going to start off with SPY here. So SPY, last week we talked about how you were looking very extended on the downside. Lots of bull divs were coming in. We had the 4-hour bull div, 1-hour bull div. I think, do we have a daily? No daily bull div, but the lower time frames were showing bull divergence. Mainly the 4-hour and the 1-hour right down here. And I talked about how if there was more bad news that you were probably going to continue lower, but we were getting very extended, and it looked like if it did want to come back up, these two gaps were some pretty easy targets for you. And as we can see, these gaps were pretty easily taken. Basically, right after we made that video, that was damn near the bottom. It bottomed on Monday, and then we just gapped up 4 days in a row. So that bull divergence on the 4-hour pivot led us into a massive uptrend right into the election. And now the election is, I don't know if we should use the word over. It's kind of hard to tell. But Biden did get declared the winner. But there hasn't been like a consolidation, right? Trump is not conceding, and we are still in talks of maybe seeing a recount, yada yada, right? There's just a lot of BS going on. So saying the election is over and the markets are gonna not be as volatile is not really accurate. So volatility is probably gonna keep continuing until probably even until January when we actually see who the president is. But looking at the chart as we see it now, not thinking about the news, just looking at the technicals, it looks like it should either consolidate or come down because SPY has gapped higher 4 days in a row, and not a single one of these gaps has been filled. If we look at this on the 1-hour, look at how ridiculous this is. So if we mark out, let's mark out these levels. These are all of our lower gaps that we have not filled. So as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 gaps below us that have not been filled. The only day that did not gap was Friday. Friday kind of consolidated. You're consolidating right on this 1-hour pivot too. You also have a 4-hour resistance up here, as well as a daily resistance as well. So this is a pretty big area of resistance. It looks like if you were taking bets here, the better trade would be for it to go down and at least fill 1 or 2 of these gaps, which I've been talking about in the Discord. This would be our favorite pattern, this bulldog pattern, where you have that pullback, maybe pull back to fill that first gap and then go higher, maybe pull back to fill the second gap and then go higher. But either way, these pullbacks, as long as they stay above like 335, they should be very bullish. So we should see a continuation to the upside. It doesn't have to pull back. If it wants to find value above these highs on Monday, this thing could go higher. Just understand that SPY does not typically put in this many gaps and then never come back down to fill them or at least consolidate. Now, obviously, this is not a typical week. This is an election week. So it does not have to come down and fill them like it typically would. This thing could just continue to go higher. But just understand that the technicals are not leaning bullish here. When you have 4 gaps below you and you're not showing really any strength on these candles, like look at these candles. These are very choppy candles. You're getting sell-offs on the tops of these candles. You're getting buy-ups on the bottom. Just a lot of wicks, right? No clear, strong candles here. Like this candle here, that'd be a very strong bearish candle. We're not really seeing very strong bullish or bearish candles here. So just understand that it's very risky to be taking big size positions right now. Be careful and just kind of wait it out or take smaller positions. Moving on to gold. Gold is seeing a boost mainly because of Biden winning. If Biden wins, the typical the consensus is that they will release a larger stimulus, right? They might the Democrats might get the stimulus that they want, which is a much more expensive stimulus. With that said, A higher price stimulus will lead silver and gold to go higher. So we already made a bet on gold in Discord. If you guys are following our trades in Discord, we're already up like 15% on that gold trade that we took. We're doing very well. I'm looking to get into silver this week, most likely as well. We'll talk about that when we get to the watch list. But gold and silver, the technicals are starting to look bullish. You are hitting a little bit of resistance around 1950, but you gain value above 1950, 2000 should be very easy, especially with the news that Biden may be our president. So keep an eye on that. It is bearish back below like 1920, 1900. Same thing with oil. The news that Biden is president, this should actually help oil, depending on kind of what he does with his policies. But he has been very hard on oil and fracking and get natural gas. So if he puts a lot of regulations on that industry, that should increase the price of oil, because that would hurt the supply, right? So keep an eye on that. But the technicals alone, not looking at the fundamental side of it, it's looking pretty bearish. You had a failure downward after we released our video last week. You bounced up, you hit some resistance, and now we're nuking. So it looks like this is a dead cat bounce, and you're going lower. Momo is showing continuation. You find any value below that pivot, very likely go back down to these lower targets. I wouldn't be bullish on oil until you get back above 40. Moving on to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is just on a tear right now. Non-stop buy pressure. The bears have had no relief. Every single candle is basically putting in a higher high, and every single push down is getting bought up. So I would be very worried to be shorting this here, but also I would be probably hesitant to long because you are so extended. The problem with Bitcoin is extended, quote unquote, and like overbought. Those don't really mean much because when Bitcoin starts to trend, it really starts to trend. It will absolutely tear faces to the upside or the downside. So saying that it's extended is kind of hard, but I would say if you're not in a long already, it's not really giving you an opportunity to long this. You would have to probably play a lower time frame, maybe a 4-hour retest of the OTS trail or a 4-hour retest of a pivot or something like that, right? You need some kind of trigger. You can't just FOMO into this. This kind of did give you an entry right here where you have that OTS trail staying green, and then you have the red to green flip. You also have the Momo showing you a bear trap. So that did kind of give you a signal right here. So you would be in a long right now if you took that signal. Target would be the pivot, and then you could target a higher level as well. Let's take some fib targets here because this thing is breaking out so much. So these would be your fib targets. You can see how that pulled back right to the buy zone. If you guys use my buy zone technique, that would have been a perfect buy there. And now you're targeting 16.3 and then 17.3, 17.6. Okay, so keep an eye on those levels. If you do pull back, watch these lower fibs to act as support. Moving on to Ethereum, basically the same story, just absolutely tearing. All the daily buy signals that came in down here on the OTS, they all played out beautifully. You blew through these targets down here. You blew through your target up here, even pulled back to retest it. So you're just absolutely tearing right now. If we go down to a lower time frame, you can see massive momentum on the breakout, pretty low momentum on the consolidation. The OTS trail told you to buy that dip. You could have bought the bottom damn near at 427. You'd be pretty much just sitting pretty right now in profit. You're up almost 6% already. But same thing here. Pretty extended. If you're not already in a long, I'd be a little careful. If you do break out, keep an eye on these fib targets. Let me get this as close as I can. Keep an eye on these fib targets, 482, 518, and 530. Lower support around that pivot and 419, 408. Okay? But all right, that is the summary of markets. Let's move on to the options watch list. So starting off on the watch list, let me actually talk about gold and silver first. Where is gold and silver? Here we Here we go, right here. So silver bouncing off a pivot, showing some buy pressure. As I said, it's kind of climbing into Biden being the winner so far. So typically when Democrats are in charge, they like to spend, 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 and that's not good for the dollar. And when the dollar doesn't do well, the commodities typically do well. So that's basically the consensus around gold and silver going up into Biden winning. And not only that, I think the technicals look really good. You can see we kind of have a bull flag on the weekly on silver. Same thing with gold. Gold also has a little bit of a bull flag here breaking out. I think we should see 185, 190 on GLD within the next, I'd say, three to 4 weeks. And then silver, we'd probably see a gap fill around 25 within the same time frame. So keep an eye on silver and gold. Those are definitely big on the watch list. Speaking of gold, Ken Rose Gold, KGC, big one on my watch list this week. I might pick up some shares instead of playing options. I have been playing shares on a few different companies recently, so I think I'm going to look to expand my shares in my portfolio, and I think I might pick up some KGC to add that to my portfolio. Basically, the thing with KGC, if I got in here, my stop loss would be around like $7. I might even add on to it down there, to be honest. But my overall targets would be around $10 to $11 on this. This would be for a longer term play, probably 3 to 6 months out. So nothing too quick. That's why I'd go shares and not options. But keep an eye on that. TSM is on my watch list for this week. Maybe for a quick in and out day trade or a quick little swing trade on the options. If I can get a cheap diagonal or maybe even sell premium on this in some way, I might do that. Especially with this being a Chinese company, with with Biden winning the election, he is going to be very easy on China as opposed to Trump being very hard on China. So Chinese companies should do well on the U.S. market. So keep an eye on all of those. I did release a watch list in the Discord. Our Biden watch list, basically going over a bunch of different sectors, all the stocks that I'm looking at, maybe picking up for Biden's presidency. So take a look at that in the Discord if you haven't already. But yeah, TSM looks really good moving forward. Another semiconductor company we're keeping an eye on is AMD. I like AMD above 83. It's holding that pivot. You're coming into our target around 86.50, and then our next target would be somewhere around 90 to 92. So keep an eye on that. This looks really good as long as the markets continue to uptrend. Another Chinese company that's doing well, we called this out basically damn near at the bottom, around 288, 280. Baba bouncing off that pivot, launching up. I told you guys to target the gap fill around 305 to 310. So far, you're looking very good for that gap fill. Momo showing a bounce as well. So keep an eye on that. This looks really good for at least a gap fill and then maybe a breakout if it does find value above the gap once you fill it. Another company that we've been keeping our eyes on Discord for a few months now, actually, Neo, absolutely exploding. If you guys aren't in Neo right now, I don't know if you should chase Neo here. Kind of the same mentality as Bitcoin. You're just on an absolute tear, but it's not really giving you an entry if you're not already in it. I did tell you guys back before that old breakout that we were looking at 35 to 40 pretty easily. I told you guys my end of 2021 target would be $50. Hey, we might even hit that end of 2020 if it keeps going up at this pace. So keep an eye on that. But I think Neo is definitely a good bet if we do get some consolidation, kind of like these ascending triangles that we were seeing all the way up. Any kind of consolidation, maybe even like a 618 pullback to this previous move. If it pulls back to around 35, 32, I probably will pick up some shares on Neo. You do have earnings coming up on Neo, so keep an eye on that. I think that's not this week. It's probably the week after, so we'll talk about that in the next video. DraftKings, I told you guys around 36, 37, somewhere around there. You were showing very big bull divs on the 4 hour. I think there was bull divs on the 1 hour as well. Yeah, very slight bull div here with a bottom warning. We called this out in Discord, did very well. This bounced up very quickly. You did hit our target, so this would be the divergence target around the OTS trail. But if this does pull back and then it has good earnings, I would keep an eye on DraftKings because I think this thing could really go back to where we were around 55 to 60 within the next few months, because DraftKings, they're based on sports betting, right? And we're seeing a lot of states lift their restrictions on sports betting. They're slowly falling as the dominoes go. They're falling one by one, right? So once the states lift all their regulations slowly, DraftKings will climb. So keep an eye on DraftKings. A big competitor of them would be Penn, so keep an eye on Penn as well. A couple of smaller ones that I'm not really too certain on yet, but I am keeping an eye on. Boom looks pretty good. This was a recommendation from the stream. This looks pretty good, so keep an eye on that above 35. You could start to climb back into the 40 range, but it looks pretty good. Nice little uptrend here, holding support. If this thing starts to climb, keep an eye on that. This would be more of a share play, not an options play. Same thing with Walmart. You are slowly climbing in an uptrend here. If you start to gain value above this 146.70 pivot, you could easily hit 150 and then go into all-time highs. So keep an eye on Walmart. Walmart's basically just a very good bet all the time. It's one of those companies that it's not going anywhere, right? And their earnings are always very good for the most part. And their dividends are really good as well. So people buy them on basically every single dip there is. And as you can see, the OTS calls out the dips almost every time. So keep an eye on that. Above 147, 150, 155 would be the targets. CVS was another recommendation from the stream. It actually exploded right after the recommendation. But if we do consolidate and then start to find some value above 65 right around that pivot, we could start going into $70 very easily. We're seeing coronavirus spiking pretty rapidly across the country. One thing about CVS, they are a pharmacy, but they also do COVID testing, okay? So with coronavirus spiking and them doing COVID testing, that should be very good for them. It helps their image. People go there to get tested. They might buy some stuff while they're there, you know. So keep an eye on CVS. They're looking really good. Last but, or actually I got a couple left here. StarBucks, also holding a nice uptrend, didn't do too bad on its last earnings. If you hold above, I'd say around 86 to 88, right around this pivot, you could start to form kind of like an ascending triangle and break higher. So keep an eye on StarBucks. Nice little uptrend here. You can see we are maintaining this uptrend, but you are topping out a little bit. So most likely a little short-term pullback to that trend. But if you do break this resistance around 91, yeah, probably around $91, break that resistance, this thing could go higher very easily. Last but not least, NVIDIA. We were actually in an NVIDIA trade. I sold 480 puts, so we sold some premium on those. We took about 70% profit. I could have held these for 100% profit, but my expiration, I think it's not this week. It would have been next week. So 70% with 2 weeks to go on my premium, that's gravy. I'll take that any day, especially with the election and all the uncertainty in the markets. I'll take that profit and run with it. But NVIDIA still looks like it wants to go higher. NVIDIA is also, they're entering the chip business with the processors, I believe. And they also have, I believe, artificial intelligence tech and software. And from what I've heard, artificial intelligence is going to be a very, very big sector in 2021. So keep an eye on any of those companies that have software for AI or they're getting into the AI business. They should be very good bets. But looking in NVIDIA this week, if we do pull back, this would be like a bulldog pattern. So you have that double bottom pop up and then a pullback. If we do pull back, find support around like 540, 550, this could definitely go higher. Okay, so keep an eye on that. But all right, guys, that is the summary markets. That is the options watch list. I gave you guys a little extra this week, a little bonus for some things that I'm watching for shares as well, some longer term stuff. But we'll see how that stuff does, and we'll come back on Sunday for the next summary markets. But I'll see you guys tomorrow for our live trading session. You guys have a good one. See you later.